Little Johnny is taking a shower with his mother and says, "Mum, what are those things on your chest?" Unsure of how to reply, she tells Johnny to ask his dad at breakfast tomorrow, quite certain the matter would be forgotten. Johnny didn't forget. The following morning, he asks his father the same question. His father, always quick with the answers, says, "Why, Johnny, those are balloons. When your mummy dies, we can blow them up and she'll float to heaven." Johnny thinks that's neat and asks no more questions. A few weeks later, Johnny's dad comes home from work a few hours early. Johnny runs out of the house crying hysterically. "Daddy! Daddy! Mummy's dying!" His father says, "Calm down, son. Why do you think Mummy's dying?" Uncle Harry is blowing up Mummy's balloons and she's screaming, "Oh God, I'm coming!" One day, a husband comes home to his wife and she says to him, "I need $100, dear. I have to go out and buy some meat." "100? Are you crazy? Come upstairs to the bathroom and let me show you something." They run up to the bathroom and he stands in front of the mirror and pulls out a $100 bill and says, "You see that $100 in the mirror? That one's yours and this one's mine." He goes to work the next day, and when he comes home, he finds the kitchen table packed full of meat from one end to the other. He looks over to his wife and says, "Where the hell did you get all this meat?" "Well," she replies, "come upstairs to the bathroom and let me show you something." They run up to the bathroom and she stands in front of the mirror, lifting up her skirt. "You see that in the mirror? Well, that one's yours and this one's the butcher's." A man decides to start a farm, so he walks into town to buy some animals. At the farmer's market, he first asks for a rooster. "We don't call them roosters here," the clerk says snootily. "We call them cocks." So the man buys one cock, then points at another animal and asks, "What do you call that?" The clerk replies, "That's a pullet." The man agrees to buy one. Finally, he asks for a donkey. The clerk replies, "We don't call them donkeys. We call them asses, but we only have one left, and it's very temperamental." "What's wrong with it?" asks the man, who is determined to get a donkey. "Once in a while it will stop walking, and it won't budge unless you scratch it behind the ears," says the clerk. The man decides to buy it anyway, and pays for all the animals before starting his walk home. On the way, the donkey suddenly stops and doesn't move. But the man has his arms full with the rooster and pullet, so has to stop a woman who is passing by to ask for help. "Pardon me," he asks politely, "would you mind holding my cock and pullet while I scratch my ass?" The young blonde bride made her first appointment with a gynecologist and told him that she and her husband wished to start a family. "We've been trying for months now, doctor, and I don't seem to be able to get pregnant," she confessed miserably. "I'm sure we'll solve your problem," the doctor reassured her, "if you'll just take off your clothes and get up on the examining table." "Well, all right, doctor," agreed the young woman, blushing, "but I'd rather have my husband's baby." A young man had been dating his girlfriend for over a year, and so they decided to get married. His parents, family, and friends helped him in every way. There was only one thing bothering him, very much indeed, and that one thing was his fiancée's younger sister. She was 20 years of age, wore tight miniskirts and low-cut blouses. She would regularly bend down when near him, and he had many a pleasant view of her underwear. It had to be deliberate. She never did it when she was near anyone else. One day, little sister called and asked him to come over to check the wedding invitations. She was alone when he got there. She whispered to him that soon he was to be married, but she had feelings and desires for him that she couldn't overcome and didn't really want to overcome. She told him that she wanted to make love to him just once before he got married and committed his life to her sister. He was in total shock and couldn't say a word. She said, "I'm going upstairs to my bedroom, and if you want to go ahead with it, just come up and get me." He was stunned. He was frozen in shock as he watched her go up the stairs. When she reached the top, she pulled down her panties and threw them down the stairs at him. He stood there for a moment, then turned and went straight to the front door. He opened the door and stepped out of the house. He walked straight towards his car. His future father-in-law was standing outside. With tears in his eyes, he hugged him and said, "We are very happy that you have passed our little test. We couldn't ask for a better man for our daughter. Welcome to the family." The moral of this story is, always keep your condoms in your car. Little Johnny and Susie were only 10 years old, but they just knew that they were in love. One day, they decided that they wanted to get married. So Johnny went to Susie's father to ask him for her hand. Johnny bravely walked up to him and said, "Mr. Smith, Susie and I are in love, and I want to ask you for her hand in marriage." Thinking that this was the cutest thing, Mr. Smith replied, "Well, Johnny, you are only 10. Where will you two live?" Without even taking a moment to think about it, Johnny replied, "In Susie's room. It's bigger than mine, and we can both fit there nicely." Still thinking this was just adorable, Mr. Smith said with a huge grin, "Okay then, how will you live? You're not old enough to get a job. You'll need to support Susie." Again, Johnny instantly replied, "Our allowance. Susie has $5 a week, and I have $10 a week. That's about $60 a month, and that'll do us just fine." By this time, Mr. Smith was a little shocked that Johnny had put so much thought into this, so he thought for a moment, trying to come up with something that Johnny wouldn't have an answer for. After a second, Mr. Smith said, "Well, Johnny, it seems like you have got everything all figured out. I just have one more question for you. What will you do if the two of you should have little ones of your own?" Johnny just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, we've been lucky so far." A man goes to the doctor after feeling ill. The doctor says, "You know, you should have come to see me sooner. Unfortunately, you have waited too long and you are going to die this evening." The man is distraught and wonders how he is going to tell his wife. Well, he tells her and she takes it pretty well. "Honey, this is going to be a night that you will always remember," she says. "I am going to treat you like a king." She prepares a scrumptious gourmet dinner with wine, candles, the works. After dinner, she slips away and returns in the most incredible negligee the man has ever seen. She leads him to the bedroom. They make the most passionate love they have ever made. The man is beside himself. Once done, the wife rolls over to go to sleep, knowing she kept her promise. Well, the husband is wide awake watching the clock. He knows that he is doomed. He taps her. "Honey," he whispers. She turns back to him, and again, they proceed to make love. After finishing, she rolls over, but he taps her for more attention. She is getting cranky, but under the circumstances, she grants her husband's dying wishes. Finally, the wife rolls over and begins to snore. Well, the man decides to tap her again. "Honey," he whispers. She rolls over and yells, "Oh, sure, you don't have to get up in the morning." My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.